All right. So now I'm on this refined paint layer, right? Now this refined paint, this is just how it always works for me. It's almost more like a pastel drawing. I like to do it on gray. I like to do it over my base paint. And it's at a lower opacity. It's around 60%. And even if I just use the same color, all those base colors are still visible underneath it. And even if I was going for something that was photorealistic by the end, which would take many, many hours, right? This would be the way I approach it. And you can see how my strokes, they all kind of follow the form that I'm trying to render. Think of them like wrinkles on the skin. If you're doing an animal and the animal has fur, think of the direction of that fur, right? And then your strokes will help reassert that. Personally, I've never been a big fan of the aesthetic of airbrushing, because the airbrushing gets rid of that directionality to the stroke, right? So everything's just super smooth. And computers can do that pretty well too. They would just use a different kind of brush to get there. So now every time I paint over with these little marks, this is what I'm doing, right? But it's like a mask at 60% opacity over the top of all those base coat layers. So now when I zoom in, this is why I call it refined paint. If I have the navigator and I zoom in, now I'm at 300%. And now this is looking like an actual painting. You know, not just looking like pixels. And there, you're only going to actually see it here, but you can also see where I haven't, refined it yet. These little areas where these shapes are still coming through. Now, the other thing that it kind of resembles that I don't like is like a sponge painting, right? If you have like too strong a texture just overlapping everything, then you want to maybe change your brush settings a little bit or try a different brush, try in a different way. But almost all of that can be solved through just opacity and brush size and the direction with which you use it. And if you're having trouble getting back to those interesting colors, that's why I put them off to the side here. All right, so you can see how that refined paint really starts to even it out. And you can control the shape much better, but you'll also be able to fine-tune proportions and spacing. Like I had his eyes a little too wide. There should be one eye width between the eyes. So this is just where you get the shape of everything and the value range. Now, if you squint at your image and you don't see anything that's the darkest dark and the brightest light, you can always push those. You can reassert your contrast. And it can be nice to have the navigator on because you can kind of see how all of that's coming together. In the whole of it. Now, some digital artists also like to have a mirror that they hold up to their image so they can see it in reverse. Some like to flip it back and forth horizontally to kind of check proportions. This is when you can really make changes and a difference to that, right? And that's why you don't jump into like super fine details too early. All right, so it's beginning to work. And I'm just using that pen tool and just have my finger hover over option because I'm just stealing colors from myself and from my references over and over again. I'm trying to keep that energy and that movement. I am. But I will pause. Yeah, I'm having hard time thinking of what to say. I'm just repeating, doing this refined paint layer. One reason I like to really separate layers is because I can turn it off and I can see all the things I haven't touched. Right? But I can tell how much of a difference it makes in the areas I have touched. So that's why digital painting takes a while. And why I really wish I could be listening to music. Well, jazz is copyrighted just like any other music. But I'm realizing there are like copyright-free playlists. Yeah, because I can't put anything that YouTube would recognize. Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, who does a lot of soundtracks, is kind of famous. He can change his mind at any time for not ever enforcing his copyrights. So this is one of my favorite soundtracks by him. So I can try it. Yeah, because I think when you're just kind of losing yourself in the painting, that's what you want. Music helps. Yeah. Now, another common mistake I haven't mentioned that people often make is they use the eraser, or because that's just changing tool, or they paint with the background color thinking they're erasing. And you're not, right? If I paint with gray, I'm adding gray into my pixels. So to get rid of stuff, I actually recommend like using a knife. And the way you do that is if I want to get rid of some stuff here, I just go to my base paint layer and I just take my lasso and I just cut and delete. Just be aggressive. Like you're using a pellet knife on a painting and you're scraping it away. Right? That's much better than painting over it with pixels you don't want. The other thing at this stage that can be helpful, because I have all this kind of crazy Ronald McDonald clown color, right? Is I could take that base paint layer and I can play with the hue saturation of it and just shift its hue in different directions. And you see how my refined paint layer stays on top of it. But I kind of like this, the warmer version of it. And so I'm going to use that. But I'm just back to painting. And then if YouTube flags the music is copyrighted and it won't let me post it, this will be mostly a silent video. That's all that really matters. Now, the eyes and nose, incredibly important for likeness, but what's often forgotten or not as fully appreciated for likeness are the ears. So ears are very distinct. And I don't have great reference of his ears because they're pretty much hidden by his sideburns in one of my references. But it's all the